Okay.
Okay, give us your name before you begin your testimony.
My name is Kimberly Heinrich. I'm here to talk a little bit about my son's experience in the school. My son Colby was diagnosed with a post-surgical binocular vision disorder and amblyopia, which affected his ability to read in school and affected his depth perception and peripheral vision. After 4 years of trying to educate the IEP staff at my son's school and the Anne Arundel County Vision Resource about proper accommodations for my son, in our most recent meeting in February of this year, the County Vision Resource stated that she wanted to evaluate my son to see if he needed a cane for the blind. The Vision Resource has always been resistant to our requests for accommodations for Colby, and the ridiculous request to assess him with a test intended for blind children shows the level of misunderstanding in our schools for children with binocular vision disorder. Colby has had 2 surgeries before he entered the school system. In the kindergarten year, he made comments to his teacher that he could see 2 of her. And I did get those comments from the teacher. She was able to recognize that there was a problem. In that first grade, he was placed on a reading intervention, and at that time, the teacher thought he had attention deficit disorder, and that was evaluated and ruled out. But in the 2nd grade year, we had him evaluated by a neurovision evaluation by a behavioral optometrist, and we started aggressive vision therapy for 2 to 3 times a week for 6 months. We did get an IEP for him. The vision advocate came from his vision therapy office and spoke at that meeting and made a powerful, informative presentation to the staff and Colby's teacher. The school accepted the accommodations and he received that IEP for another learning disability under reading and writing, which mentioned his visual impairment, but the visual impairment was not included as one of the qualifying diagnoses. Colby's teachers and the resource teachers, actually the special education teachers worked very closely with Colby that first year. And for example, his homeroom teacher was willing to give Colby a little sign. As Colby's eye was drifting, as the teachers could often see when they were making eye contact with their kids, she would give him a little tap on the side of the head, and Colby's eye would come back to normal without really interfering with her teaching process. In advance of the 3rd grade year, I discussed my son's struggles with the school, and we were reassured the accommodations would continue. And by mid-year, the geometry teacher was sending all kinds of comments home about how sloppy Colby was and how disorganized his math work and tests were. I asked about the font being enlarged, and at that point, they started to resist the accommodations, saying that Colby's IEP was for reading and writing and not math, so therefore his enlarged font should not apply. At the same time with geometry, there was a lot of clutter on the page, and he was having difficulty to look at the shapes, and they refused to follow these accommodations for his math class. So we asked for another IEP meeting, and the county vision resource was invited to attend. And it became very clear that the sole purpose of her attending was to fight the accommodations. She mentioned that since Colby was getting vision therapy once, twice a week, that he shouldn't have to follow the accommodations at school. And I said to her, so you're telling me that if I go to physical therapy and learn how to walk with a crutch, that I shouldn't be using the crutch any other time except during physical therapy? The 4th and 5th grade years were much better for Colby because we had the same teacher, the same special education teacher, the same homeroom teacher, and they were willing to work with the accommodations that were being requested, and he thrived. We did have another IEP meeting just last year that I was just speaking to in that 5th grade year, and again, the vision resource was brought to this meeting. My teachers were willing to stand up for Colby and his need for accommodations and actually voted her down. And so the accommodations are continuing, and he's making progress. But at the same time, they did mention their concerns about Colby continuing to suppress his eye, because they were able to say that Colby continues to trip occasionally, that he bumps into people when he walks down the hallway because he has no idea that his eye has turned off. And this is where the vision resource thought that he needed to be evaluated a little bit deeper for the cane. I can tell you that I have spent countless hours in IEP meetings discussing accommodations, and if there was simply just an understanding of how these visual impairments impact education, that we would have saved tons of money already. by not sitting in 20 hours of IEP meetings alone, just this year, for me to get his visual impairment included on the IEP. So I've gone off on my testimony just a little bit, but I just think it's very important that you understand that the vision resource teacher that is supposed to be here on behalf of our kids is not. She's here on behalf of the school, and reducing the extra effort that the teacher might have to do to make the accommodations happen. Colby's academic success over the past 4 years is directly related to whether his teachers are willing to follow our request for accommodations. In the years that he has had teachers who are willing to partner with us, he does well. In the years where his teachers have been resistant to the accommodations, he has struggled. From our experience, it is very clear that many teachers, as well as the Anne Arundel County resource, do not understand the visual processing disorders, and our children are suffering academically and socially from this lack of understanding. And I do want to make one final comment, that during these last 3 years, while my son was under the care of the behavioral optometrist, we were also under the care of our pediatric ophthalmologist. And we continued to see both of them. And they work together, they respect each other. And because of this progress, he is doing much better because of this relationship that they do have. And I felt that was important to mention. I appreciate your support for this bill.